Thank you, seniors, for your wonderful sharing. We are honored to have with us two alumni speakers who generously took time out of their busy working schedules to share with us about their knowledge and experience. These alumni have not only experienced the ISE curriculum, but also the real working world. So if you have any questions for them, please do ask them in the link in the Zoom chat. Firstly, we have Abi Parikh. Abi is currently an assistant manager of strategy and growth at WRAEK. He was an ex-analyst at Kearney and has past experience in the field of business analytics and growth strategy. He has also worked at MNCs, SMEs, and startups in different industries. Abi, you may begin when you are ready.
Hey, hello. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. All right. Thanks, guys, for having me over. I actually don't have like a long sharing to prepare, but a long sharing prepared. But honestly, yeah, I would just appreciate sort of any questions that you might have. To just start and kick things off, just a little bit of background about myself. So I graduated from ISE as well as are you guys. I graduated in 2019, so it's been 2 years now. So yeah, it's been 2 years since I graduated. And when I was in ISE, yeah, had a lot of fun. I was part of the USP program as well. So both ISE, USP combination, and did a minor in business along with that. So yeah, pretty eventful times in uni. Post that, when I graduated in 2019, I joined the consulting industry first. So I was at this firm called Kearney, and where I was an analyst and a senior analyst for 2 years. Had a great fun, managed to work across different industries from telco to consumer goods to government sector, healthcare, and even like niche industries like animal feeds. So yeah, it was a super, super fun experience working across industries. And obviously in consulting, you'll get to solve a lot of different problems. So I work basically on digital transformations, on growth strategy topics, on value creation, and lastly, like cost optimization as well. So yeah, had a good fun time and applied a lot of my sort of ISE learnings into the day-to-day work of consulting. Maybe not so much on the coding or modeling side, but more on how to structurally think about a problem, how to think, for example, we look at queuing problems, we look at like transport optimization problems, how to isolate the different, if you're called like linear programming, I'm not sure if you guys done it through yet, but in linear programming, you always have an objective function and you have the different constraints. So I think it's very similar in the working world, where obviously you will have your data analytics and your because the problems are a lot more complex in the real world, right? So you'll have your data analytics teams and your business analytics teams working together, where the data analytics helps to code out what problem that we define, but it's up to us still in the consulting world to kind of define the problem. So I think the whole methodology of linear programming I thought was pretty useful for me. I took another module in ISE. I think I can't remember the exact name, I'm forgetting it, but it was related to human factors engineering. So, putting yourselves in the minds of the end users, the stakeholders, but I did a project about like, assisted wheelchairs, things like that. So I think that has also helped me, that sort of design thinking and basically putting myself in the shoes of the stakeholder and thinking about the problem from their perspective. So I think, that was also, super, super useful for me in consulting in the first 2 years. Post consulting, then I decided to sort of venture out and look into more of internal strategy roles. And that's how I landed a role at Grab, where I'm currently working. So in Grab, I work specifically in the transport strategy side, where I help to see more on the supply side, which is on this, the drivers, not so much on the passengers, but on the drivers. How do we secure a steady stream of drivers on the platform so that at the end of the day, our Grab rides can be cheaper if we have a steady stream of drivers working, especially during the hours where there's a lot of surge and things like that. So yeah, I look at like the demand side for drivers, and specifically like, how do we price our products for them? How do we engage them better in terms of customer engagement? How do we, so that's like, 60% of my job. And then 40% of my job is also launching new businesses. So as you know, that Grab is a growing company. So as and when you'll see new icons pop up on the Grab, some of it could be related to the work of my team. That's basically because we're launching new businesses all the time. So coming up with a business case for that, coming up with the market research, convincing the stakeholders, including the tech and non-tech sides, and then coming up with a final business case of why this might be profitable in Singapore. So yeah, that's 40% of what I do. So 60% think of that as strategic planning, which is helping the existing businesses do better. And then 40% is new project launch or new business launch, which is, yeah, basically looking into new areas where we might not currently be playing and then expanding from there. So yeah, that's pretty much about it. So in a summary, graduated 2019, 2 years of consulting, currently working in Grab and strategy. So yeah, if that's something that interests you, happy to answer any questions down the road. I think we have some other speaker as well. So maybe after that, when we move to Q&A, happy to answer questions on that. Yeah.
Thank you, Abi. Next up, we have Chen Ping Zhang. Ping Zhang is the chairman and co-founder of WRAEK, an innovative hardware gaming startup. He will be sharing about his experience in the startup and entrepreneurship field. Ping Zhang, please.
Yeah, thanks. Can I have the ability to share screen?
Yes, you can share your screen.
Okay, thanks. Okay, just checking that you all can see the slides.
Yes, we can see your slides.
All right, hi everyone, my name is Ping Zhang and I'm actually a fairly recent graduate, January batch of 2021. Actually, I cleared university in 3.5 years. For myself, actually, I'm very much involved in the whole ISE community as well. When I first joined in year 1, I was also in the vice director of the ISE club doing BACC case competition back in 2018. Following which, I went on to NUS Entrepreneurship Society and became the president there. Then having this community that joins with me, I went on to create my startup WRAEK, as well as co-founder NUS Alumni Ventures. So personally for myself, I've interned at multiple companies such as Ernst & Young, Procter & Gamble, before deciding to do my own startup WRAEK, as well as building NUS Alumni Ventures. So I think to start first, right, I'll introduce a bit more about NUS Alumni Ventures as well. So NUS Alumni Ventures was actually created last year as an angel investment network and non-profit organization under Office of Alumni Relations. So for y'all that after y'all graduate or when y'all are still students, y'all are able to join NUS Angel Ventures. It consists of distinguished NUS alumni and NUS students. And the vision is really to promote NUS as well as Southeast Asia startup community and allowing more investment to flow between entrepreneurs and investors. So the network is actually very fantastic, right? Because to be an angel investor in Singapore's legal term, you need to be accredited investor. And accredited investor means that you need to have a certain amount of net worth as well as network. So for the whole NAV network, we have multiple key stakeholders that are partner level, managing director or CEOs level within this network. And that's why a lot of students and alumni really benefit from this network that we created. And yeah, so NAV is also actually recruiting students, right? So for some of y'all that are interested in learning more about startup, getting to understand more from the investment perspective, if you want to go into venture capital firms next time or become an entrepreneur yourself, this is a good place to go. And this will follow to my next slide, right, which is the reason why I'm more confident in creating a startup, right? Startup is actually something very, very difficult if you don't have the necessary network as well as connections and the ability to do things. So with all this network, it actually fostered the ability as well as the community for me to really go into building my startup. So in a gist, this is the hardware. WRAEK is a hardware gaming hardware company, right? And we create the first motion pad in the whole world. So motion pad is something that you can put your palm down, actually use it to control direction. So there's something that we started back in university, and we work on it and refine it until we patented the whole idea earlier this year. So in a gist, it's a mechanical keyboard as well as a motion pad that's able to allow your palm to control directions, or make it into a cursor, or make it into any macros to alleviate the WASD problem. So I see some of y'all like smiling there. So y'all must understand that, yeah, so WASD is a real issue, right? And that's why we try to actually elevate this problem. So a typical day in a startup life, right, it's to collect cold leads, warm leads on LinkedIn, email lists, as well as any other like different channels, and outreaching to them to get them to come down to try the product, to get them to come down and support our Kickstarter, which is happening in November, and also to connect with key stakeholders, right, in project operations, such as manufacturers, suppliers, organizers, PR agency. So on that note, right, actually the project management module in ISE is very, very relevant. I hope that it is still part of your curriculum, and you should definitely listen more to it. It's very good in helping you craft out a logical time frame and helping you like manage your like the whole operations better. The other thing is, for myself, I'm also an ACCA grad, so I'm able to do accounting. So I also manage a stable cash flow of my business, as well as budget forecasting. This is extremely crucial. I cannot emphasize it enough. If your startup run out of cash, no matter how good your product is, you are a dead meat, because competitors can crush you left, right, center. And of course, lastly, right, it's to network with key stakeholders in gaming industry. At the end of the day, for any startup to work, you need to have a group of supporters, a group of valuers, and an early crowd. So these are the key stakeholders that and key opinion leaders that you need to network with. So to end it off, right, some takeaways and learning points for doing a startup, right, is that you really need to have a strong community, be it in terms of building a business and raising funds. For my startup, I'm quite fortunate that we have a lot of mentors that's willing to help us, and actually like angel investors that's willing to invest in us. Without this money, the startup cannot fly. Secondly, you must be ready to grind 24/7, right? You must not be too concerned with work life, because trust me, in startup, work life is kind of a luxury. And lastly, always be ready to fail and learn new skills and adapt. I think this is something that ISE has taught me pretty well. Is that we are learning so many things, right? So we are very, very open to learning like a lot of different skills. We learn a bit of cost management, we learn operations, we learn on business skills, we learn on programming skills. It's really I study everything concept. So this is something that's very, very necessary. And so for some of y'all that wants to be an entrepreneur, I will really like encourage y'all to take the deep and actually enjoy the whole process. Yeah, so thanks guys. Feel free to ask me any questions as well.
Thank you, Pinsang. Now we will have a Q&A session for alumni sharing. So if you have any questions for our alumni, please submit your questions in the Zoom link. For our first question, from our pre-event survey, there are actually many of us who would be interested in to go into management consulting as well as entrepreneurship pursuit. What are some skills, both technical and non-technical, that a fresh graduate should possess if they wish to enter the industry and succeed?
Okay, maybe let me start first by, yeah, I don't think in terms of the background for consulting, at least I can speak for consulting, is right. Like your background really does not matter, whether you're like, from, because traditionally consulting always attracts people from the business background, right? But it really, really doesn't matter what your sort of background is, whether it's engineering, business, or whatever. Because in my time in Kearney, I worked with history majors, philosophy majors, life sciences majors, along with the traditional set of, business majors as well. So I think from that point of view, we're pretty sorted. And actually for ISE, it helps a lot because as you mentioned, right? It's like an I study everything approach. So we do learn across disciplines, from business to engineering to human factors, and as you mentioned, also like project management. So yeah, I think overall, from a discipline-wise, ISE is very well suited towards consulting as a whole because you are cracking problems on a daily basis. So I think that's one of the soft skills that you definitely need to have, which is the problem-solving ability. And again, I'm not too worried about ISE folks not having that, because then, you wouldn't be an engineer in the first place. Because by default, we do is like problem solving. So I think problem solving is one soft skill that you need to have. The other one that probably that I would emphasize a little bit more on is stakeholder management and communications, because I think that's where a lot of us might be lacking a little bit. But in terms of the other engineering faculties, I also know that ISE has a lot more group projects and has a lot more, presentation opportunities. So I think use and leverage those to kind of build your confidence in terms of how you present, in terms of how you articulate your thoughts, and finally, convince your stakeholders, be it your professors or be it your fellow classmates, to be able to not just solve a problem, but be able to present it convincingly as well. So I think that communications side skill is something that is also necessary in consulting. So that's on to sort of soft skill side. I think in terms of hard skills, most big consulting firms tend to have a dedicated data scientist or dedicated analytics team within in-house. So I wouldn't say that you need to be masters at Python or at R or something like that, but it would be good if you're able to know how basically Python and R works. And I think it's part of the ISE core curriculum as well. It was introduced when I was there in my year 4, so I'm guessing by now it's already ingrained in it. So I think being able to know basically not just the syntax, but basically the programming methodology, it really helps. Because, for example, there was this one problem that I was working on where our client was this Southeast Asian airport. So they operate multiple airports in Thailand, and then for one of the airports, it was kind of optimizing which retailers to put where in order to increase footfall or increase the profits in each of them. So for example, you probably want like family shops to be near the entrance, so that when kids enter, they would be like, I want to check that out, that kind of thing. So they would convince the parents to go in, whereas more of your beauty shops can be more after you pass through immigration, when you're just sort of spending or wasting time waiting for your flight, and you feel more exploratory, searching for a perfume or searching for a bag, things like that. So I think when it comes to optimization, because it was a very complex airport, you have millions of passengers literally coming in every day and out. So that's where we required like a Python simulation of the entire airport. And that's where, so there was a data scientist who did the actual simulation, but I had to define the problem statement for them. I had to understand their code and be able to kind of present it back to the CEO, because CEO for sure doesn't understand code. So it's, so I think in terms of the hard skills, being able to, I think the core is Excel for sure. Like you must be a pro at Excel, pretty much. But besides Excel, I don't think you need those skills. It just is helpful in terms of the hard skill wise. And I would say that's pretty much it. Like being able to program and being able to kind of understand dashboards. I think dashboarding is also super important in consulting, as more and more clients don't really want static reports of what you do. They want to see track on a weekly basis how their business is doing and how the various verticals are performing. So if you know the programming methodology and a little bit of dashboarding, be it in Tableau or Power BI, that could sort of differentiate you from other candidates as well, I would say. So in summary, soft skills wise, probably problem solving and communications, and then on the hard skills wise, programming methodology and business dashboarding, BI.
Okay, so more towards the entrepreneurship side of things. Thanks, Abhi, for sharing on that. For the entrepreneurship side, right, similar to what Abi has shared, problem solving in terms of soft skills is actually very crucial because there's nobody out there that's going to give you an template answer. And startup usually don't have the money to hire consultants such as Abi to actually define the problem statements and everything. So you need to be a problem solver for yourself, and you need to constantly validate whether the problem that you're trying to solve is actually the right problem. Are there enough customers that actually want the product? Are there enough users that actually think that this is a necessity? You have to be able to figure out all of that. And another skills that you need, right, I would say similar to consulting, right, is the ability to build beautiful decks. At the end of the day, you need to be able to build really beautiful decks to go ahead and pitch to people, be investor, be key stakeholders. You need to make sure that within a shorter span of time, they are able to catch the critical details of why your business model is worth investing, is worth them partnering with. Otherwise, big partners will never look at you because they don't see any value alignment. So problem solving skills as well as PowerPoint making skills is quite crucial. Another very important skills, right, is networking, because as an entrepreneur, that is it really requires you to really put yourself out there, make sure that people know who you are, can relate to you, so that when they think about, oh, I want to buy a gaming keyboard, the first thing they think about is WRAEK, think about me, or think about my other co-founders. So that's something that you have to constantly network, get yourself into this business circle, and only then they will actually come back to you with like any opportunities of partnership or any of sorts of such a thing. So really need to go down to network. And I would also like to clarify or maybe elaborate a little bit more on networking. Right? There's a skill that typically university doesn't really teach us very well. But one of the key skills to networking, especially for individuals, university students like us, is really LinkedIn. So for some of y'all that have LinkedIn, kudos to y'all. But for others that don't have, I advise y'all to actually start building up your LinkedIn profile right now. It is very, very crucial, be it in terms of searching for an internship, or be it finding a job, or be it like networking. This is very, very crucial. And if possible, make sure that you fill out all the pointers within LinkedIn. You all can actually take a look at my LinkedIn profile. Maybe I'll share the link later and see what are the typical things that you should be adding in as a good form of like complete profile. Okay, then something that is relevant is also dashboard, right? So as Abi pointed out, dashboard is very, very critical, especially in a situation where for entrepreneurs, we need to look at the supply chain, we need to look at how much cash flow we have, and we need to look at our stakeholders and what stage they're at. So having a dashboard really helps us plan better and make sure that the critical data are not lost. One thing that is less relevant also, right, is actually big data analysis. As an entrepreneur, right, you don't have, at least for myself, at a very, very early stage of entrepreneurship like span, right, we don't really have big data to analyze. I can only look at the external data that are out there, but if it's more relevant to my own customers, there's only around like this amount of individuals. So there's little need for big data analysis. But I'm not saying it's not relevant, it's just less relevant at the very, very start. Yeah. So to take away, the most important thing is to create a LinkedIn. So I advise all of y'all, make sure y'all create a good LinkedIn profile. Yeah.
Can't agree more with Pinsang. Yeah, that's absolutely crucial.
Okay, for our next question, you know, in university, sometimes you take a module that's quite abstract and you can't see any link to the real world. So my next question is, what are the skills and knowledge that you've gained in university that are directly applicable to your day-to-day job?
I guess I'll take that first. First of all, right, whatever you learn in university, right, it always form a very, very good like backbone to whatever you are doing. At the end of the day, I'll be really honest, 99% of what you learn, typically you don't really use it in the actual work life. But that 99% allows you to, at any moment in time, when you see that something is relevant, your mind will go back to the days of university, plug that out, magnify it out, and you're able to actually understand it very, very quickly of whatever you are doing. So I think ISE actually prepares us very, very well for that because it teaches us a heck lot of things. In terms of the more relevant one, as I previously mentioned, right, it's project management skills. This is something that regardless of what you're doing, you are definitely going to be doing a project basis, be it consulting, be it entrepreneurship. There's always a project that you need to be involved of. And understanding the Gantt chart, understanding how you plan out your activity list is actually very crucial in meeting timelines to stakeholders, to your own startup and stuff. Another thing that I'll say is very, very relevant, right? It's for me, is actually the learning of coding. I think I heard from some of the juniors, such as Priscilla, that within ISE, you are actually learning a bit more of coding. So that's actually very, very relevant, right? Because a lot of the data that we collected, if you want to process it very quickly, we just run an algorithm to process it and we'll get the big data. For example, how did I come up with the pricing of my new product, right? Is by analyzing all the other competitors out there in the market, creating actually an algorithm and actually finding out what's the best at pricing. And from there, I know what's the range that I should be pricing my product. And that actually helps me solve the pricing issue for my startup. So I would say that the coding lessons that you learn, especially 4211, I'm not sure if it's still there, 5202, is all quite relevant. So you all should consider taking that. Yeah, and I think SDP, right? I'm pretty sure that SDP is still a fundamental thing that you all have to learn. SDP really puts you out there as a consultant, right? So it really makes you like work with actual stakeholders, understand their key concerns, come up with right problem statements to solve their problems and the right solution. So please like put in a lot of time into that project because that will really give you the necessary like life skills and experience to deal with actual stakeholders in organizations. And sometimes within SDP, you might even see like office politics. I'll say that that is a good learning experience because in any office, they'll confirm the office politics. Yeah, so I guess that's some of the critical things that the relevant modules that I learned in ISE that's very, very much applicable. But of course, there's the other 99% that's less relevant.
Yeah, no, I think they covered very well most of the points, but it's just kind of building on that, right? So I think two additional things that I got out of ISE that I pretty much liked and unexpectedly used was not unexpectedly, but I used it pretty well. Was number one, I think what I mentioned was linear programming, which is basically you might not be doing that actual linear programming in that sense, but the way to think about a problem in terms of, defining a particular objective, defining the constraints to set objectives, and then finally defining what your variables should be, what your optimization problem should be. I think that was super, super helpful. So like, did you give you a concrete example? I got lucky and I was working on with an animal feeds player in Thailand, and then we're working on a supply chain sort of optimization project. So basically the client came to us and then they were like, hey, so we see that, we are already the biggest in the market, but is there any way that our products could be, released to the market at a cheaper rate? So in order to figure that out, what you have to do is you have to trace from the source. Like you have to see, okay, for example, chicken feed is made up of X percentage of wheat, Y percentage of barley, and then Z percentage of vitamins and other nutrients. So from the source, which is where the farmer grows it, the farmer sells it to the distributor sends it to the retailer is where this person could possibly buy it from. And then along the way, there would be, transport costs incurred, there'd be some spillage incurred, there would be accidents and all of those risks that you have to take into account. So the objective function that we were optimizing for was the total cost of this process. But then there were variables in terms of, okay, how much can a truckload carry in terms of the amount of wheat? How much can a farmer grow per acre of land? How much, a warehouse can actually store in terms of the number of silos of bags that they can. So I think this was, it's almost like a textbook problem that we're trying to solve, but with a lot of real world limitations and a lot of sort of real world complexities that you won't find in a assume an apple was a circle kind of scenario. So yeah, so I think that programming method, like linear programming methodology, and just the core of what we learned in ISE in terms of optimization really helped for me. Both the introductory mods that you take in year one and also specialization in terms of, yeah, I think there's a whole supply chain track that I think quite helped for my role. That was one. And then the second thing, as you covered it, Pintan, right? It's like basically about SDP. I think SDP, I underemphasized or underestimated how useful it would be, because it's a year-long thing. So everyone just takes it as, oh, okay, you know what, I'm just going to prepare it 3 months before the submission. I'm going to get serious about it. But yeah, I mean, you can, and you technically, this is off the record, but yeah, you can still do that and get good grades. Nothing wrong with that. But I think then you might be losing out on the aspects of SDP that you would otherwise learn, you know, like for example, the main thing that I learned out of SDP was the interdisciplinary way of solving things, because it's kind of like a culmination of all of your ISE knowledge, right? So like my client was TTSH, as in not in consulting, but in SDP. And we're trying to see like, how do we solve the hospital bed crisis situation where the occupancy rates are so high? So it required a little bit of human factors engineering. It required a bit of those optimization of the queuing problem that we solve. And then it required a little bit of systems thinking as well, because hospital is so complex, number of processes. So yeah, I think this interdisciplinary thinking that you sort of are forced to apply in SDP, because I think there's some grades that you get for using different concepts and things like that. So don't treat it as just a grade hacking thing, but treat it as really how to bring all 4 years of your knowledge into a project, because that will be super useful in, you know, your real working world as well. But yeah, it's true. Like probably there's 99% of things that you learned in the classroom, you won't apply it, but you would learn how to apply those things. Like you'll learn the approach of solving problems that you have done in your SDP or your classes, and then you apply it over to your sort of real life. So that's I guess sort of like a wisdomly advice that I would say. Yeah, just don't treat your classes as like a grade hacking thing, but also try to see, if I do this in a particular class, how will it, you know, sort of apply to me when I start in an actual job.
Okay, for our next question, it's directed to Abi. Do you have any tips on preparing well for the summer analyst role at Kearney?
Oh, okay. I like specific questions. That's so thanks for that. Yeah, I think in terms of tips, it's definitely going to be so the typical process, and it's the same process across consulting firms. It's like you would have your CV screening at stage 1, and after that you'll have probably, depending on your performance, 3 to 4 rounds of case interviews. So I would say that number 1, it's get your CV tight if you already haven't gotten your CV tight, because I can speak for experience. I didn't have a very tight CV when I was in year 3. So I probably didn't do any consulting internships. I was just lucky to land up a role in consulting post-graduating. So I would say, like, yeah, just tidy up your CV, like get it where use CFG resources. I found them to be actually pretty decent in terms of like most of the times when you get like, you know, CFG emails, you probably might not, you know, act on it, but do use the CFG resources to kind of come up with the CV and then get it checked, because that helped for me to see where I was wrong in my CV, where I was being a little bit verbose, where I was being a little bit not impact oriented and things like that. So yeah, get your CV tight. That's, I think, number 1. Number 2 is in terms of concretely preparing for case interviews. And I think case interviews traditionally were a consulting thing, but not anymore. Like you go to probably any sort of interview styles, and probably even for a startup, when you do interview, they will throw a problem that they have been facing on a real world, right? That you'll be asked to solve. So I think case interview wise, what I would suggest is it's kind of like doing math. Like you can't read case interviews, you have to do them. So find a group of friends that you probably are interested in, and, you know, similar circles, and trying to do case interviews themselves, and try to, yeah, give problems to each other and try to see like how do you basically present your case. So how do you think structurally, like in a MISI way, mutually exclusive, cumulatively exhaustive way of thinking about problems, and then how do you sort of present those said problems in cases. So yeah, for case interviews, I would say definitely practice, practice, practice. There's no sort of silver bullet to it. And in terms of CV, yeah, use CFG help, use sort of like your help from your seniors as well to kind of, yeah, to get your, CVs type. But otherwise from, yeah, no specific things, because each CV, as cliche as it sounds, we look at it for its own merit. So there is no sort of ideal experience that you need to have in order to get into consulting. Because yeah, like if I look at just my case, I probably wouldn't be a very ideal experience, because like across 4 years of my uni, I never did once any single consulting internship. I worked at 2 startups. I worked at a trading firm, like an oil major. Yeah, exactly. So not a very sort of conventional, I didn't work in any banks or any MNCs. So yeah, kind of sort of unconventional experience as well. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So the next question is directed to Ping Zhang. Given the success rate of startup, how and like why are you willing to take such a big risk? And do you have any backup plans in case things don't work out?
Wow, whoever asked that question, yep. Very astute question, very, very good question. So yes, entrepreneurship is a huge risk, right? So for myself, actually, that wasn't very easy. That wasn't a very easy decision for me. I had full-time offers, but I decided to turn it down to do entrepreneurship. So what got me into believing that the entrepreneurship is gonna fly better for me, right? At the end of the day, it's about the amount of funding that you are able to receive at the on-go. So for us, we are able to raise already a 6-digit funding round for pre-seed. So some of you all that understand the stages of a startup, right? There's pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, and for pre-seed, we already have a 6 digits, and we are going on to raise like another 6 digits round somewhere in November this year, and next year we're going to raise another 6 digits round. So on that end, because of our ability to raise, in terms of if you are thinking that perhaps salary is a thing of concern for you, then if you are able to raise enough funds, then you need not be too concerned with actually your starting salary of sorts. Although it will definitely be much lower than what consultants can give you, or like the other industries can give you. But at the end of the day, you are grinding for the long term, right? You're looking for, and some of you all that are looking for exit strategies, maybe like sell off to another company, or maybe raise it to IPO stages. You need to have that fundamental belief that you can do it and grind your way towards that. So in Singapore, like fortunately, right, the environment, right, gives us a very, very good safety net. So I think Abi in the past also worked in startups, so he can relate that in Singapore, there's NOC program to help you understand. There is Enterprise Singapore, there's an actual organization that has a lot of like government employees working there to help you solve problems, help you by giving you money, help you by helping you expand overseas. These are treatments that in any other world you cannot even imagine that you'll be getting. So all this support-based and community-based actually lessen the impact as well as the risk of like entrepreneurs in doing a startup. In fact, one of the statistics, right, is that for companies that's incubated through NUS or like through NOC programs, right, the success rate of your company typically is around 5x higher than normal other startups in Singapore, just purely because of the support base that NUS community is able to give. So coupled with all of that, coupled with the belief that you can really build something, that wasn't a tough decision for me. Yeah, so for some of y'all that is considering or already have a project in mind for entrepreneurship, a good way is to reach out to NUS Enterprise or maybe start through going to NUS Entrepreneurship Society or NUS Alumni Ventures to find the first few angel investors that will help you in your journey.
Okay, the next question. The next question is, are there any industry trends that you see within your own respective industries?
Yeah, okay, so maybe just to start that off, right? Yeah, I would probably talk about, I mean, it's a very broad question, so a bit hard to kind of encapsulate all the trends that are going there. But if I can just summarize in a little bit, it's, yeah, for consulting, definitely we are moving past that stage where, I don't know how much you guys know about consulting, but like basically in the 80s and 90s, the conception is that, oh yeah, you just call in a bunch of people in suits and then they will create a pretty PowerPoint deck and just put it on, you slash it on a table. So yeah, that's not the idea anymore. And especially clients don't like that today. So we've already moved past that stage where, you know, consulting is just about making pretty PowerPoint decks. It is still a lot about making pretty PowerPoint decks, but it's not all that it's about. So I would say that probably where it was last time 100%, now it's closer to like 50% where you'll be doing work on those set strategy pieces. But the other 50% is going to come a lot more from how do you actually implement that strategy. So in terms of, say, to give you a concrete example, right? So I was working with one of the world's largest FMCG players. And for them, we were doing a digital transformation project, but it wasn't like, so yes, across their different areas, be it supply chain, marketing, sales, finance, we did a thorough analysis of, you know, where they had opportunities, where they were lagging behind the market in terms of adopting certain tools, in terms of adapting certain systems and things like that, or they were not leveraging enough. Now the lingo is going to fly in, but they were not leveraging enough big data, AI, ML, and business intelligence characteristics. So we did that analysis for them. And traditionally, consulting would have stopped there, which is basically telling you, hey, look, you're shit. We told you that you're shit. And then, yeah, it's basically the end of the analysis. But what we did after that, and that's what a lot of consulting is moving towards, is actually creating minimum viable products or MVPs for them. So it's not just letting the person know that, for example, what we did for one of these FMCG players, and I'm happy to see that that project actually took off. And if you go to their website, it actually works now, is that we created sort of this chatbot for their suppliers. So they weren't obviously using, you know, natural language processing and the whole sort of internet era to be able to streamline communication with the stakeholders. So it was still very much email based, and it was very much, you know, over formal SAP systems and things like that. So what we did for them was we just created a simple WhatsApp chatbot where if their suppliers had any questions, they could just, you know, literally like how you're talking to a person, they could write that in natural language, and then this chatbot could, in the backend, work out everything and extract data from, you know, the data warehouses and then provide a response to them. So it's kind of like how you go onto websites of tech firms like, you know, Lazada or Shopee, and you can chat with the chatbot. That was exactly what we did for this particular FMCG player as well. So I think that's one trend that we're seeing, is the clients just don't want to see analysis. They also want to see how you're going to sort of develop the analysis into actual action. So obviously, you know, most of the projects in MNCs take years, and we won't be there for years. But typically, we would still create within that, you know, sort of 3 or 4 months engagement that we have with them. We'll create minimum viable products for them to be able to know that at least in concept, this works. And then it's a matter of scaling it up for them and their own internal teams to do that. So I think that's one trend that we're seeing. It's and to me, that's personally a bit more fulfilling as well, to be able to see the actual impact of, or, you know, what you're suggesting to them. So that's one trend. And then the other trend is probably, I would say, it's a lot more sort of data-driven, which is like the use of data analytics. Because until now, a lot of the MNCs have been okay with collecting the data. So, they would have this huge manufacturing plants. They would have, across their supply chains, telematics to collect data on the vehicle performance and across, their machine and equipment performance. So collecting data was not the issue, but it's using that data to kind of create a meaningful insight that's being a challenge for almost all the clients that I've worked with. So being comfortable with data and actually finding, those like connecting the dots and finding links between the different sort of big data, as Pinchang mentioned, right? That's something that we're moving more and more towards, where it's not just sort of working with very sort of clean data that they will give you, but it's working with ambiguous, large amounts of data and then kind of process and kind of come up with a recommendation for the client. So yeah, the not so short version of, basically two things, which is, one is moving towards more implementation MVP style projects, and second about, leveraging big data to come up with actual concrete recommendations.
With regards to entrepreneurship as well as the startup investment ecosystem, right, there are three major trends that I'm witnessing as well. First of all, is in the past, a lot of VCs actually based the investment decisions on some data that they collected, but a lot of it is actually based on human interactions, understanding the founder's profile, understanding their market share. But right now, in today's context, right, instead of comparing your comparables of the startup with an actual maybe IPO companies, and then like putting it back into your startup profile, there's actually a lot of data out there that is able to help you compare startup very, very immediately and very quickly. So one such system is Venture Cap. So actually what Venture Cap does is they pull in all the data of all the startups, how much they raise, who they raise from, what's their revenue, what is their total amount raised, what series they are in, who are the co-founders, and things like that. So in today's context, right, data become a huge fundamental underlying ground for all the VCs in terms of making decisions. The second trend I'm witnessing is that within Southeast Asia ecosystem, there are progressively more exits that are much larger compared to the past. In the past, Southeast Asia's ecosystem is relatively nascent. So a lot of exits that we are witnessing is actually like inter-company sell. So like a startup just sell to another company, or startup just exit by selling it to maybe a competitor, for example. But right now we are witnessing that more Southeast Asia startup is actually going all the way to the IPO stage compared to last time. Just in Singapore, we have been witnessing a lot of billion-dollar unicorns that are being formed just this year alone, especially given that it's a COVID situation. So what this also underlying means is that there's much more money flowing into Southeast Asia. And that's why at this juncture, it's actually a very, very good time to actually venture into startup, because there's more ready money out there. And for Singapore VC industry, right, it's also like fairly nascent. A lot of VC industry actually pop up after 2002, meaning to say that a lot of them didn't went through the dot-com bust, which caused a lot of actually in the Western countries, the VC to flop very badly and just fail. So that's why in Southeast Asia's ecosystem, right, in general, there haven't been a major setback other than, I'll say, the 2008 crisis, which actually didn't impact the VC scene a lot, as well as the COVID crisis, which actually turned out to be even better for VCs, right? They managed to raise more money, they actually put in more money into the startup ecosystem. So that's the second trend I'm seeing. The third trend that I'm seeing is that in any country, especially such as Singapore, if you are in the good books of government, you can generally like fly better. In Singapore, right, for Enterprise Singapore, they have policies or they have grants to support certain industry to boost them forward more. So there's in line with government's focus of where they want to shape the industry for the next 5-10 years. So if you are in line with the government's like focus region or focus map, generally you will be more well supported because the government will be supporting you. The VCs are more confident in terms of supporting you because they understand that government will also be putting money into you. And for now, I see that there are 4 major industries that's getting a lot of government support: food tech, esports, fintech, as well as lastly, it's deep tech. So this 4 is getting a lot of government attention, and especially in terms of technology side. This is where the government is putting a lot of emphasis and focus on. And there are a lot of funds that are readily available, such as the seed fund, seed capital fund, SG Innovate Fund, which really helps you like boost your startup much more. So in general, in conclusion, there are 3 major trends. The data trend, more VCs are relying more on data, so you cannot just rely on your personal networks and personal skills. Second thing is Southeast Asia ecosystem seeing much more bigger exits compared to past. And lastly, focus on what Singapore government is focusing in general, and you will be able to do much better.
Okay. Unfortunately, due to time constraint, we can't ask every single questions. But the last question we'll end off at a fun note. What is your best memory of NUS or something you miss in NUS?
What I missed in NUS. I think, so when I graduated, it was a bit of an awkward time. So what I would say I definitely miss the most about NUS is Techno Edge. I love the food there. I like, when you go out in the working world, especially when you're working in CBD, you kind of realize how expensive lunch can get. So I very much appreciated Techno Edge, and like, yeah, just talking around with other fellow batchmates, and yeah, having a good time. So I think it's definitely those points of like informal interaction that we'll have with batchmates that I miss the most. I hope Techno Edge is back now. I haven't been to NUS in a while, but hopefully it's back, because yeah, it was a great place. Lots of memories there.
Yeah, I agree with Avi, right? Techno Age was great. Unfortunately for me, there was COVID, then Techno Age actually went to like renovation. So for some of y'all that was unlucky enough, I think like 2 years of it, we didn't have Techno Age. But for the relatively younger juniors, I think Techno Age, it's ready already. There's even a Starbucks there if my memory didn't fail me. So Avi, you can go back there. For myself, I think the biggest thing that I miss, right, is really the community. In NUS, the community that's formed there, right, I can actually like chat with law students, FSS students, dentists, doctors, engineers, business folks, anytime, right, because of the community that's out there. So this is such a thing that I really miss, because at any point in time, if I have a question of a particular industry, I can just hit them up or ask them any questions. And especially for like both me and Abi, right, as we go into the working industry, our day are really very, very packed. So we really have very little time to meet friends, to really like engage in communities and build communities. So that's something that I terribly miss. So for some of y'all that is hardcore muggers, which I understand really, take some time to really interact with people from other like faculties, because these are the people, right, that next time will be working in very, very lateral industries, and where you can actually reach out to them and get like critical data or critical details from.